So hi everybody, and welcome to this, which is my first video to put on YouTube that hopefully is going to explain how I got from a hyperbike, which I had, onto a Harley Road King Classic and the journey that goes along with it. So anyway, for years and years and years I'd worked my way up. I mean, I'm a huge sports bike fan, don't get me wrong. I love my bike racing, all forms of MotoGP, British Superbikes, World Superbikes, AMAs, and I've always been a sports bike rider, and eventually worked my way up to the 1300R, which was the most, it's the scariest bike I have ever ridden in my life. It really could, the acceleration on that bike was just immense. So anyway, I really enjoyed that bike. I was so at one with it, you know, it was so planted on the road. I could kind of put it wherever I wanted, and I had some good times on that bike. But what I was starting to find out was I was getting a lot of pain in my left shoulder, and I could never understand why. And I put it down to ride a cramp at first. So, and it just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I was having to pull over and rest for a while as my whole arm and everything was aching, absolutely killing me. So eventually, after a bit of persuasion, because you know what blokes are like, we never go to the doctors, wife made me go, and they sent me off for a CT scan. And it turned out that I had a massive problem with my shoulder, and also a vertebrae, the fourth vertebrae in my neck was collapsing, which was causing a lot of the pain and a lot of the blood loss in my arm. So to cut a long story short, I ended up having 2 operations, and even after the convalescing period, the operations weren't successful. You know, the 1300R was sitting in a garage, and all I was doing was polishing it. And then when the time came to actually go out and ride again, nothing was any different. I'd just be travelling a couple of miles, and then I'd have to pull over. So in the end, we had to decide on, do I carry on riding or do I give up bikes? And I couldn't give up bikes. No way can I give up bikes. I just love it too much. So it was looking like a friend of mine had got a Triumph. It was one of the big cruiser type ones, and he let me have a go on it, and I found out that I could ride that, and I was getting no pain. And I've never been a cruiser fan ever, and I was finding that was going to be the only way to go. And so reluctantly I had to start looking around for a replacement for my 1300R, and I never ever wanted to get rid of that bike. Like I say, it took me a long time to work my way up to it, and as a machine I don't think I've ever felt as one with a bike as I did with that. It had that different front end, the dual lever front suspension, where you've not got forks, you've got a wishbone kind of thing, and it was so planted and so stable. And I know people say there's a time and a place to be a hooligan on a bike, but for me the time was every time I got on it, and the place was every place I rode. And to put it into perspective with that bike, how comfortable I was on it and how much of a hooligan I could be, I had a new rear tyre put on it, and I wore it out in just under 600 miles. And that's not doing track days, that is being a complete idiot on public roads. And maybe you shouldn't admit that, but that's the way it was. Anyway, with a tear in my eye, I was starting to look around for different styles of bikes, knowing that if I wanted to ride and I wanted to stay on a machine, I'd got to look at a cruiser type. So I did some research on the internet, and the only cruiser that I found that had got like a sporty feel was the Suzuki M1800R, and I think in the rest of the, God, look at that sitting on there. The only bike I saw which got like a sporty feel was the M1800R, and I like the look of the upside down forks and everything, and so we eventually found a dealer which was quite a way away from us who'd got one in stock. So I went down to try it out and sit on it, and it fitted me okay, I must admit. So we arranged the test drive for the following week, and I went down and took it out, and I was finding I could ride it, you know, for quite a long period of time, and it was quite comfortable. So in the end, reluctantly I have to say, I had to part exchange my BMW for the Suzuki, which is no bad thing, I suppose, in a way, because I really did need to slow down. You know, I've got to take stock and stop being an idiot. But maybe it was fate that was telling me, you know, calm it down, calm it down. So anyway, I had the 1800, got used to it, put on the sissy bar for my wife, and everything was going fine, absolutely fine. And I put a few custom bits on it, and I was finding after the running period the bike was quite powerful, and so we started doing quite a few trips on it, myself and my wife, and we both enjoyed the bike. And then when I get back to the beginning of the story, when I say it was a left-hand turn, which is why I've ended up on Harley Davidsons, it was actually on this road here that the 1800 tried to kill me. Unbeknownst to me, unbeknownst to my wife, this was technically a brand new bike, and it tried to kill us. And I'll show you a bit further down the road just what happened. So anyway, you know, this is not a bad road at all. I mean, I used to hoon around here on my 1300R absolutely stupidly, you know. It's nice for a bike. It's a good road. Bit narrow, got to know what you're doing, but there you go. So you start to come into this series of twisties now, and on the 1800, you know, because it was long and it was low, it wasn't too bad. You never ever took these roads really quickly. And that, as you come around here now, there was a bit of a twitch sort of there at that point, and it happened so fast I never ever give it a thought. I came into this corner and it did it again, and I wasn't going very fast at all. So I come down here, and like I say, I'm not even thinking that there's anything wrong at this point. And so as we come here now, we change down, we drop into three right-hand turns. Sorry, two right-hand turns. This one, and then just over the bridge, there's another right-hand turn. And then as we accelerate away, we go into one of my favourite bends of all time. And believe me, on the 1300R, I used to hit this bend so hard, third gear, flat out, popping the rev limiter, you know. So anyway, coming down here on the 1800, not a care in the world. It was a lovely sunny day, actually, nothing like today. And you set up for this corner. If you know this road, you just come out wide now, sort of here, and then you start to lean in now, lean in as it drops away, and this bend is such a long sweeper. It's absolutely lovely. I mean, we're doing what, 50 miles an hour now, and you can just hoon it in. But just as I hit the apex here, bang, my left foot went slamming into the tarmac, and I ended up on that side of the road over there, just past those gates. I didn't know what the hell had happened, so I stopped, and I just remembered my foot was absolutely killing me, you know. It had been slammed into the tarmac, and I just didn't know why. So anyway, after about 5 minutes, my heart was just absolutely pounding. I was sitting on the bike. I was thinking, God, you know, I was facing oncoming traffic. if anything had been coming the other way, that would have been curtains for me. So after about 5 minutes, I kind of sort of got myself together, and I walked back to the corner, and I couldn't see anything. You know, I didn't know whether I'd hit something in the road. I didn't know whether I'd hit a patch of diesel. So I'm looking at the tarmac, and I'm thinking, but you know, there's nothing there. The road's dry. But right in the middle of that apex was a skid mark, and it was quite wide and about 10 inches long, and I just, you know, I couldn't get it through. I couldn't comprehend what had happened. So anyway, nothing on the road. I hobbled back to the bike, and because the bike had the big 240 section rear tyre, as you got close you could see the side, the left hand side of the tyre was shiny. So I get underneath the bike to have a look around, and with it being a shaft drive, you've got the rubber boot that is like a dust seal that connects the shaft to the engine, or to the gearbox, sorry, and underneath that was soaked, absolutely soaked in oil. And when you looked at the left hand side of the tyre towards the outer edge, there was a ring of gear oil all the way around it. And it, you know, it took me about 10 seconds to realise that this thing had just high-sided me, or tried to high-side me. And I think what saved me was the feet forward riding position, because as the bike had gone over, my foot had obviously slipped off the peg, got into the floor, and kind of lifted the bike back up, which catapulted me across the other side of the road. So I managed to limp the bike home, got it back, rang the dealers, and they came and picked it up and took it away. And it was about 3 days later when I had an email, not even a phone call, an email from Suzuki UK, who had said they were very sorry, but, you know, this was a brand new bike, it shouldn't be leaking oil. But it was the second one in the UK that they knew about, and that kind of made me see red. I thought, well, if you knew about this, why aren't you issuing a warning? Because that is one hell of a bike. You know, that thing tried to, if it had gone down on the left hand side, I'm pretty much sure I'd be an amputee now. You know, it had taken my leg off, no problem, big bike. If it had done the proper high side, catapulted me off and then come down on top of me, I'm pretty much sure I'd be in a box now. And I was quite mad at the fact that Suzuki just weren't bothered. You know, they were just saying that it's the second one they know of. Please accept. We'll get it done under warranty. There'll be no charge. And I thought there hadn't better be any charge. So anyway, it was about 2 weeks they had the bike. I went up to the dealers who were fixing it for me, and they had a kind of a puzzled look on the face, because they'd replaced the seal, but the seal that they'd taken out looked brand new. There looked absolutely nothing wrong with it. It was as though nothing was getting past it, but it was. And even they had to admit they were just totally baffled as to why this was happening. And I've never heard of anything since. But when I got the bike back, I said to my wife, I'm gonna have to get rid of this bike. Even though I loved it, there was no way in the world I could ever trust it again. I'm not gonna go through that. And because I loved the look of the 240 rear section tyre. You know, I'd kind of got in to the cruiser kind of thing, and I like the look of that. And I started looking around on the internet, and one bike that caught my eye with a 240 rear section tyre and had kind of the same styling was a Harley Breakout. I'd never ever considered a Harley Davidson before. Over here in England, it's the press are not too hot on Harleys. We've heard all the horror stories, I think, from the AMF period, and I think that kind of stuck. But I went up to a local Harley dealer, one had just opened, and I was quite surprised because I went in. I've never been in anywhere that was so friendly before. You know, most of the dealers over here in the UK, they kind of wear suits with fins on the back, you know. They don't like you sitting on the bikes, they don't like you test riding them. And when I went into Harley, I was talking about a breakout, and they just said to me, how long do you want it for? And I was really surprised. I said, what do you mean, how long do you want it for? They said, well, you can have it for as long as you want. Take it for as long as you want. And I was quite surprised over that. So, you know, they're quite expensive bikes, and here they are just saying, you know, go out, take it out. So I arranged the following week to take out a breakout, and went up, signed the papers and everything, and they just handed me the keys, and away I went. I was out on it all day. But the thing was, what I was finding, even though it was a lovely bike, it was quite a long stretch to the bars. It was the feet position was kind of like the Suzuki was, but the hand position, I was leaning over a bit more, and I was finding that the pain was starting to come back on my shoulder and my neck. But what really sold that bike for me was that engine. It was the 103B counterbalanced engine. It was so smooth, never ever, you know, all the things I read about Harleys, they were lumpy, they shake your fillings out, this thing was so smooth. So I went back, and Tim, who was the principal dealer there, said, how do you feel about it? And I said, to be honest, Tim, I absolutely love the bike, but I just think it's too much of a stretch to the bars. But I love that engine, and knowing what I know now, I could have customized the bike, because you look at the Harley catalogue and there's nothing you can't get from one. So he said, well, if you like that engine, try one of these. And it was a Fat Boy, and the only time I've ever seen a Fat Boy was in the Schwarzenegger film, and it looked, I know it was quite an iconic bike, and I kind of like the look of the big steel wheels, you know, they're called bullet hole wheels, anyway, something like that, bullet caliber wheels, something like that. So I arranged for the next weekend to take one out, because they hadn't got a new one in, they'd only got a second-hand one, and he said, I want you to try the new 103B engine in this bike. So I went up the very next weekend, and I'll never forget, this thing was absolutely brand new. It was gorgeous. It was a black Fat Boy, gorgeous. Well, it was absolutely chucking it down the rain, chucking it down, and it had got 0 miles on it, totally brand new tyres. And Tim was so ashen-faced as he handed me the keys, and he just said, just be careful on it, please, please be careful on it. It's 0 miles, brand new tyres, you just be careful. So obviously you are careful, aren't you? You know, it's not your bike, you're just taking it out for a test drive. So anyway, I pulled away, and it was like within the first 200 yards, you just immediately knew something was right. Even though the guys had put straight through pipes on this thing, and it was setting car alarms off every time you went past a car with an alarm, you know, you heard it behind you. It was as though if I could sit in a mould and have a bike built around me, that's what the Fat Boy was like. It fitted me perfectly. I love the riding position. The engine was gorgeous. And when I went back, I had quite a bit of a test ride, and it went back, it was absolutely filthy, obviously, because it was pouring down the rain. Tim just said, how do you feel about it? I said, I really want one. I really want one. And I couldn't believe it was me talking, because if you'd have told me 5 years ago that I'd been riding a Harley Davidson, but not just riding a Harley Davidson, but loving one, no way. I'd have argued black was white, that you'd be wrong, because I am Mr. Sportsbike fan, you know. But anyway, I ended up, Tim did me a fantastic deal, and I ended up with a Fat Boy in black, and I loved it. Had it for 18 months. Put the pipes on it, put the sissy bar on it, and I was noticing that I was kind of looking. I always go online and I look around at what people are doing to their bikes and what you can get out of the catalogue. And I was kind of putting together a wish list of things that I wanted for the Fat Boy. And 3 things I wanted were higher bars, a bit higher bars, a screen, panniers, I'd already put some other chrome bits on. And the more I looked, the more I was trying to turn my Fat Boy into a Road King. And Project Rushmore had just been released. And I went up and I was talking to Tim, the dealer, and he said, we have one in our other dealership, which was kind of like 40 miles away. And I finished work one afternoon, and me and my wife, I'm going to get done for speeding, no I'm not. Me and my wife, we took a trip down, and this baby was sitting in there, and I just fell in love with it. Never even test rode it. I went back and I said to Tim, do me the deal on it, mate. And they did me an absolutely fantastic deal. And when people say Harley Davidsons hold their value, I can vouch for that. I lost nothing on the Fat Boy. In fact, I think I made about 200 because of the extras that I put on and the deal that the guys wanted to do. So here I am now. This is the first ride out this year. I had the bike in October and then winter hit, so she's been put away since then. We've still got a big break-in period to do. She's only got 90 miles on the clock. My wife hasn't been on the back yet. We've got to sort the suspension out for that. She runs air suspension on the back, and the book is saying that we've got to put 40 psi in for 2 up, and I actually think that is kind of a bit hard. So I think I'm gonna start at 30 and then work around and just mess around with it, because it's part of, you know, it's one of the most important things of a bike is getting your suspension setting right. So anyway, I've ended up now with a Project Rushmore Road King Classic. It's in bright silver pearlescent metallic. Absolutely gorgeous. It is. I think now I've found my bike for life, if there is such a thing now. I'm finding that even with the Fat Boy before, I'm starting to really enjoy my riding again now, whereas before I was kind of heads down, backside up, get there as fast as you can. Now I'm looking at scenery, I'm looking at riding, you know, just nice and steady. And I'm just enjoying Harley Davidson so much, I can't believe it's me that's saying it. And neither can my friends, to be honest. It's kind of always instilled into you that these things are so unreliable, and they're just not. And I came up with a saying the other day, and I said to my friend, I can't believe I'm going to say this, and I'll probably put it at the end of the video in writing, but through ignorance, I suppose, I used to say you wouldn't catch me dead on a Harley Davidson. Now, through experience, I'll own a Harley Davidson for life. I really will. They are so well built, these bikes. There's no plastic on them anywhere. They're all metal, which is one of the things I never realised before. No plastic things. And when you put a Harley up against one of the Japanese bikes, there's just no comparison whatsoever. I do hope this wind noise is not doing your guy's head in as much as it is with mine, but I've got an AGV helmet on at the moment, AGV Skyline. It's not the quietest helmet in the world, but there you go. So I hope the mic's in the right position. There's another thing I've never tested out, but I've got a feeling it should be okay. I've got it tucked down in the cheek pad, so it shouldn't be too bad. But anyway, you know, this bike now is something to cherish for me. It really is. And I have to say to people, if you're in doubt, then take one out. You know, I know that sounds cheesy, sounds corny, but you've really got to get to know them. That's the thing. Don't take anybody else's word for them. Go out and try one for yourself. Go into the shops where they have, they'll have 1 or 2 bikes set up, and they have different handlebars on the wall that they'll pull out of the steering stem and put in different seats that can move you forward, move you back. They've got absolutely everything. I think The only thing for me that this bike lacks is a hostess. And I reckon now, if I look through the Harley catalogue for 2015, they've probably got one. You know, she'll probably come trotting down out of one of the panniers, give you a cup of coffee, cup of tea or something, you know, that'd be quite nice. And so, the one thing that we've got to do, and I will be doing in my next video, I've got some CFR slip-ons to go on, or they're actually the DNA slip-ons, sorry, should I say. I had them at Christmas, and I'm going to try them before. I'm not sure whether I want to go complete stage 1 kit on this. I just want a bit more of a deeper sound, obviously, because at the moment with standard pipes, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but because we have these Euro 3 emissions laws, the exhausts are so restricted that instead of sounding like a Harley Davidson, it sounds like a Volkswagen Beetle. I'm not going to take the cat out, I'm just going to swap over and put the exhausts in and see how we go with that. And then we've got to set up, obviously, for the suspension. I've still got quite a lot to learn about this bike, obviously, because I'm kind of one of them people. I need to know the ins and outs. It was the same when I had my 1300R. It had some of the weirdest suspension that, you know, most people couldn't comprehend, but I managed to understand it. I managed to tune it for me. And like I say, you know, I had some loon times on that bike, but for now I'm taking stock now. I realise that if I want to carry on riding, I've got to change my riding style. I've got to change my style of bike. I've ended up with something that I'd never ever dreamed I'd own. I never ever dreamed I'd have a cruiser bike. And not only, I can't say enough good words about Harley Davidson, the service that they give me. The bike's incredible. You know, I go through my bikes with a fine tooth comb. People will always tell you every bike I have, I keep it immaculate. I even polish underneath them. You know, if one of my bikes was to run you over, you'd see yourself screaming in the bottom frame rails as, you know, as it went over your head. And believe me, over winter I have been through this bike with a fine tooth comb, and every nut and bolt, every bit of finish on this bike is top quality. You understand? Yeah, I know that they're expensive, but they're expensive for a reason. I mean, you get what you pay for, obviously, we all know that. The old adage is that, you know, you buy cheap, you buy twice. Now, I'm not saying that the Suzuki was cheap, but there's no way I'm going to hang on to a bike where you know, it's developing faults within a couple of 100 miles. And something that really scared me, you know, I've been around that bend there and I wouldn't stop because I still have nightmares about what could have happened there. That's the first time I've ridden that road in a long time, because I used to love it, I used to haunt it all the time, but since the 1800 did that to me, I'm kind of reserved now. So anyway, hopefully the next video that we have, my Harley Davidson will sound like a Harley Davidson. So until then, I'll let you go, stop you being bored, and hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you again real soon.